Hey, boys and girls. Kathy, if you see this, show it to Ronnie. I know he's not on Facebook. Or Michelle, show this to your brother, this video to your brother if you remember. This is a early 80s, 1983 maybe, Fender Musicmaster Bass. A few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, Ronnie got into a selling frenzy and he sold his 40-year-old Stratocaster and maybe 50-year-old Stratocaster. And he wanted to sell this, but the problem was maybe in the early 90s and maybe even the late 80s, he had taken it apart to sand it down. He succumbed to the late 60s, early 70s mania of sanding the paint off your guitar. Bruce Springsteen did it in '68, and then a lot of Jersey musicians did it. But I mean, Lennon and George Harrison had done it before that. And unless you're Eric Clapton with, the SG Custom, the Fool painted, you're. Let me put it this way: if you know you're going to live to be 67, and you're going to have a lot of guitars, they're worth a lot more with the original paint on them than they are sanded down. We just didn't know that when we were kids, and we didn't think they'd last that long. And we didn't. Anyway, just remember that, boys and girls. So he was old enough to know better, but he decided to change the color, take the paint off it. And he was thinking that it would be, mahogany underneath, and it would be a nice wood grain guitar, maple. And he found out that Fender made these out of basically balsa wood or plywood, and you couldn't just slap a coat of stain on it or shellac and have a nice looking guitar. So it sat pretty much in pieces. He managed to lose all the screws to the hard whale, and until he didn't play it much, so he didn't mind, and it wasn't like he needed to get it together because he had a session. And he decided to sell it, but he couldn't sell it in pieces. I asked him what he wanted for it, and he said, $200 or $300, and I thought, well, that's reasonable with it being in pieces like that. And the paint off it, if you look at these from that vintage and a 35-year-old Musicmaster short scale bass like this, it'll go for $1,000, maybe a little more. But so I told him I would clean up the wood and slap a coat of paint on it. He wanted it painted pearl, like a white, pearl white, and iridescent kind of shiny thing. But I said okay, and I started to do it, and it was harder. The wood really was bad. It was hard to get it the way I wanted it, and I sort of stopped working on it. And one day he asked me about it, maybe a year later, and I said, I haven't really done anything for a while. And I gave him $300 and said, now it's my problem. You got your money out of it. He agreed with that. So, but I finally did it and showed this to Ronnie. About a week ago, I decided that I was feeling, I don't know if I'm ever going to feel better than I feel right now, so I better start doing things rather than waiting till I improve. So I took out, one of the first things I did, I took this thing out and finished it. I didn't put pearl on it because I remembered what Tim McCarty had said, Ted McCarty had said at Gibson when he was talking about the Gibson Les Paul Custom. He said, if you don't want to do a lot of finish work on the wood, and you don't want to use a really good piece of wood, he said, slather it with black paint. So that's what I did. I slathered it with black paint, and it came out pretty nice. It's a pretty good looking guitar. I've got a take it down to CJ, a Jersey Shore guitar and amp repair, and have him restring it and do the intonation and stuff. But it should be, you know, it's a functional Fender bass. And I'm thinking I can use it when I'm at the control board running a session, you know, like the Rickenbacker, one of the bigger guitars gets in the way. But a little short scale like this, I might be able to sort of play along, play the bass, and run the recording session at the same time. So it might make it a little bit easier for me there. So I might actually use it, and it's certainly in good enough shape to be a usable bass. I don't know if it's a collector's item with my paint on it, but it's certainly good enough to be a functional bass.